What is K-pop? Where does it originate from? Its influences? And what goes on in the industry that we know of today? In this series, I will be looking at the history of different K-pop groups, starting off with just the genre of music as a whole. I've been listening to K-pop for over a decade now, and its growth in popularity since 2011 is huge, to where now it's not uncommon to hear a K-pop song in the UK radio stations. As I'm now somehow a K-pop dance teacher, I think it's important for newcomers to the genre to understand the history behind it, and the history of some of the genre's most famous artists, to see what the current artists of today are influenced by. Also, just a pre-warning, I'm not Korean, I'm still learning Korean, and my pronunciation might be a little bit off. So, to start off with, what is K-pop? K-pop is quite simply short for Korean popular music, or Korean pop. It originates from South Korea, with its influences coming from pop, experimental, rock, jazz, gospel, hip-hop, R&B, reggae, electronic dance, folk, country, and of course, traditional Korean music itself. What we know as K-pop or K-pop idol culture only really began in the 1990s, so it's still very much in its infancy. However, the origins of popular Korean music brings us all the way back to 1885, where Henry Appenzeller, an American missionary, began teaching American and British folk songs to Korean children at school. These songs were called tanka, and they were well-known Western melodies sung with Korean lyrics instead. For instance, the song Oh My Darling Clementine,
oh my darling, oh my darling, oh my darling Clementine, you were lost and gone forever, dreadful sorry Clementine,
became 심청가.
바닷가에 오막살이 집안채 고기 잡는 아버지와 절모르는 딸이다.
During 1910 and 1945, when Korea was under Japanese rule, tanka songs really rose, as this was how many would express their feelings towards their oppression during the Japanese rule. However, the then existing tanka collection would be confiscated by the Japanese and would be replaced with their own versions. The first known Korean pop album was named 이 풍진 세월, This Tumultuous Time.
이 풍진 세상을 만났으니 나의 희망이 무엇인가?
And was done by Park Chae-sun and Lee Ryu-sek in 1925, which was an album of popular Japanese songs translated to Korean. The first pop song actually written by a Korean composer is thought to be Nakwayusu, Fallen Blossoms on Running Water, by Lee Jung-suk in 1929. In the mid-1920s, Japanese composer Masao Koya mixed traditional Korean music with gospel music that American evangelists had introduced in the 1870s. This type of music became known as enka in Japan and trot, or trot, in Korea.
언제든지 달려갈게 사람들이 나를 부르면 한참을 생각해보겠지만 당신이 나를 불러준다면 무조건 달려갈 거야.
After the Korean peninsula was separated into North and South in 1945, after its liberation from Japanese occupation, this was when Western culture really started to get introduced to Korea by having small Western-style bars and clubs playing Western music. Then, after the Korean War between the North and the South in 1953, a lot of US troops decided to remain in South Korea, and with that, causing the spread of Western culture in South Korea and Western music gradually becoming more and more accepted in the country. Prominent American entertainers even held USO shows in Korea for the US Army. These included Nat King Cole, Marilyn Monroe, and Louis Armstrong. This prompted attention from the Korean public, and in 1957 a broadcast began on the radio called the American Forces Korea Network, raising the popularity of Western music and influencing Korea's own, with songs being modelled after Western ones. In the 60s, open auditions began being held to recruit musicians to perform at US Army clubs. In this time, a lot of the country was still impoverished due to the war, so if you were skilled, this would be one way of making money. people would perform at dedicated clubs for American troops, with venues rising to around 264. They would perform various genres including country, jazz, blues, and rock and roll.
You ain't nothing but...
Soon, the Korean economy would grow, and its entertainment would follow, letting Korean musicians perform to larger audiences. Some Korean singers even gained some international popularity. In 1959, the Kim sisters went to Las Vegas and became the first Korean artist to release an album in the US pop market. Their cover of Charlie Brown actually got to number 7 on the Billboard singles chart. They then also became the first Korean artist to release a full album in the States too. They performed in Las Vegas and would make appearances on radio shows and TV shows, one of which was The Ed Sullivan Show, which they appeared on 25 times. The supposed first Korean rock band is said to be Ad4, which was founded in 1962. This was following the rise of Beatlemania, and more local rock bands would appear. Korea's first rock band talent contest being in Seoul in 1968. Korea's first supposed rock song, The Woman in the Rain, was released by Ad4 in 1962, and was a light rock song many thought was reminiscent to the early Beatles. Shin Jung-hyun, the founder of the band, was so important to the development of rock music in Korea, he is now regarded to many as the godfather of Korean rock. At the end of the 60s, more and more musicians were university students and graduates. These artists would be heavily influenced by American culture at the time, which was the hippie movement era, leading to more light-hearted music. The younger Korean generation was very much opposed to the Vietnam War going on at the time, very much like the American younger generation were. This resulted in the Korean government banning songs with more liberal music. However, folk-influenced pop remained popular, and the local television channel known as MBC organised a talent contest in 1977. This would then be the foundation of many modern festivals today. In the 1970s though, the Park Chung-hee government actually banned American folk music and Korean rock music for its supposed association with sex and drugs. They even banned trot songs because of its Japanese style, the ban being lifted in 1987. One artist, Han Dae-soo, was raised in the US and was mainly influenced by Bob Dylan, Leonard Cohen, and John Lennon. His song, 물 좀 주소, Give Me Water, became iconic amongst the young people of Korea with his daring movements and singing style, and after shocking the main public, it led up to him being banned from performing in Korea. He then moved to New York and didn't come back until the 90s. The 80s gave rise to the ballads, with Lee Kwang-jo's 1985 album 가까이 하기엔 너무 먼 당신, or You're Too Far Away to Get Close To, selling more than 300,000 copies. In 1980, the Asia Music Forum was launched, with representatives from 5 different Asian countries competing in this event. Cho Young-pil went on to win first place and continued to have a very successful career performing in Hong Kong and Japan. He would also be the first Korean singer to perform in Carnegie Hall in New York, and in 1988 he sang Seoul, Seoul, Seoul in English, Korean and Japanese to celebrate the 1988 Seoul Olympic Games. In 1992, a group called Seo Taiji and the Boys would debut on MBC's talent show with Nal Alayo, or I Know, getting the lowest rating from the judges. However, this marked a major moment in K-pop history. The song was inspired by hip-hop, jazz, rock and electronic dance, and the song and album of the same name became so popular that it influenced other songs to follow the same format. The 90s was also when the Big Three were founded, with SM Entertainment in 1995, YG Entertainment, which was founded by Seo Taiji and the Boys' former member, Yang Hyun-suk in 1996, and of course, in 1997. Idol bands were then created to cater to a larger teenage audience, one of the first being a group called H.O.T., a boy group who debuted in 1996 after enduring rigorous training in not only singing and dancing, but also etiquette, attitude, language, and how to deal with the media. They would perform their music with energetic dance steps, which subsequent idol groups would follow. The group's success made the idol culture that we know of today. K-pop idols today are trained and selected to appeal to a larger global audience, going through an extensive training process which some have even said is an abusive system. They are chosen for their height, whether they're thin, and if they have a feminine or adolescent look, regardless of gender. In 1997, the Asian financial crisis would prompt Korean artists to look for new markets, with H.O.T. releasing a Mandarin language album and Diva releasing an English album in Taiwan. That brings us to the 21st century, the rise of Hallyu, or the Korean wave, which is the popularity of Korean culture overseas. K-pop is now increasingly making appearances on the Western charts such as Billboard, and you've probably even heard some of the songs on the radio by now. Online social media has actually been a vital tool in the rise of popularity of the genre, now being able to reach a much wider audience, with solo singers such as Boa and Rain, and groups such as Super Junior, TVXQ, Big Bang, Girls' Generation, Wonder Girls, Kara and 21 becoming just some of the most popular groups in the mid to late noughties and 2010s. Several attempts have actually been made to break into the American market, however, these were mostly failures. But in 2017, BTS won Top Social Artist at the Billboard Music Awards, becoming the first K-pop group to do so. Also, becoming the first K-pop group to perform at the American Music Awards in 2018 with their song DNA. 2019 saw the first K-pop group to reach number 1 on the Billboard albums, which was BTS's Love Yourself tier. K-pop managements have been criticised for exploitation of their idols through overwork and slave contracts, with many idols rehearsing and performing with constant little to no sleep and highly restricted diets. In 2009, SM Entertainment were taken to court by TVXQ members who explained that their working conditions were leading to adverse health effects. This led to the nullification of several TVXQ members and resulting in the Fair Trade Commission giving out contract templates to regulate the working conditions of idols. So, now for the expressions to learn. These will be what you may hear in the future videos, so this will be what they mean. Daesang or Ponsang. At music awards, artists may win a Ponsang for outstanding musical achievements. One Ponsang winner is then awarded with a Daesang, the grand prize of the evening. All kill. This refers to chart positions. This is when a song sweeps all of Korea's major music charts at the same time, achieving an all kill on the real-time charts. An Insta's certified all kill. This is what happens when a song tops all of the charts, both real-time and daily, and is first on the Insta's real-time chart. A perfect all kill. An Insta's perfect all kill is when it is a certified all kill and then also places first on the Insta's weekly chart. A mini album. Kind of like an EP, it has multiple tracks, but not quite enough for a full album. A title track. The main song of an album, released with a music video and is a song artists perform to promote the album. Promotion. When a title track is released, artists will perform on music shows to promote the song and the album. These normally last up to a month, with a debut stage for a brand new group, comeback stage for ongoing groups, and a goodbye stage for the end of the promotion cycle. Fan names. These are names given to fans of a group. For example, BTS's is ARMY, SNSD is Sony's, and TWICE is ONCE's. A group colour. This is an assigned colour for the group and its fans. For example, TVXQ's is pearl red and SNSD is pink. Light sticks. This is a form of merchandise. A group may release a light stick, normally with the group's assigned colour, for fans to use at their concerts, Big Bang being the first to do so. Fan chants. These are chants normally consisting of the group's members' names, called out during non-singing parts of songs.
다시 run 난 멈출 수가 없어 난 어쩔 수가 없어 이것밖에 난 못해 너를 사랑하는 것밖에 못해.
Saseng fan. Obsessive fans indulging in invasive and stalkish behaviour, known to be quite a big problem, with some idols being sent to hospital because of anti-fans. Basically the same thing, but instead of saying they love the idol, it is the complete opposite. So yeah, that was the very brief history of K-pop and its word meanings. I hope you've enjoyed the video and maybe you've learned something. I'll see you in my next video with my first group history. Let me know who you'd like to hear about.